What's up in War Eagle, everybody? You got Ike Jones. We are here with another edition of the Weekend Tailgate. The On 3 seems to think Auburn has put together a potentially top 25 roster. Let's talk about it.
This is the Weekend Tailgate. Brought to you by Golden's Cast Iron. C-Dub. Ike Jones. Be Will. By G. You are now listening to
The Weekend Tailgate, brought to you by the good folks at Golden's Cast Iron. Whether you work out, grill out, or chill out, Golden's Cast Iron has products to be able to service your needs. Make sure you head over to goldenscastiron.com/WR. That lets them know the War Report sent you. Use code Get Your Weight Up if you want 15% off of weights. Code TWR for $65 off of fire pits and Kamado grills. If you happen to just want to support what we have going on, man, Caesar, we did the watch party yesterday and people were wanting to get in on the watch party, but guess what? You got to be a member to be a part of the watch parties. I apologize to everybody who is not Green Name Gang. Watch parties are members only. We are in the thick of the SEC season, and we want to make sure our members are getting great perks for their membership. So thank you to everybody who has made that decision. If you are someone who doesn't possibly have the money to be able to do that, someone may be generous today and give away memberships. We had like 70 or 80 memberships given away yesterday to people. So we have a lot of new green names that are going to be popping up in the chat for this month. You get 1 month free when somebody does that for you. So make sure you look out for that. It is a random assignment from YouTube. We have no control over who gets those. We appreciate people who continue to support us by allowing other people to be part of the community. Also, hopefully you got an opportunity to stop by Los Amigos. They were there. They had the TVs up and ready to go. More Auburn sports going on. If you want to go in there and check out, the conference matchups today in the NFL, you can go by Los Amigos, check out their restaurant and check out the games there. Make sure you tell them the War Report sent you when you arrive over there. And just in case that anxiety was getting to you yesterday during this very closely contested game versus Tennessee, the Rogue Shop got you covered. Over there, use code REPORT. You can go to rogueshop.com. America's #1 online dispensary is the Rogue Shop. Caesar, good to see you back in here. Yesterday, you joined me in the post game. Auburn basketball, close victory. You had a chance to sleep on it a little bit, reflect, maybe scroll through social media, maybe talk to some other people. Do you have any additional thoughts on what we witnessed last night from Auburn basketball?
It's pretty much the same. This team is finding new ways to win, and that's, again, it gives comfort. This is one of the things people bragged about with Auburn has been their offense this year and how they're able to score in so many different ways, how much improved they are from beyond the arc. They ran into a Tennessee team that was determined to take that away from them. And they, for the most part, they were successful in doing that. However, what really took center stage with Auburn was their defense, right? So it wasn't like Tennessee, even though Tennessee's offense isn't as good as it was a year ago. Auburn made it tough for them to operate as well. And so I think what people are seeing is that Auburn can play different styles. They can adjust to what's being thrown at them. And so Auburn was in a heavyweight fight last night, and they came out the winner in this one. And so that gives you a lot of confidence that if teams are able to take certain things away, again, we saw that with how this team has managed to pass week and a half without Janai Broome, that this team knows how to adapt to different challenges that's being thrown at them. And this was yet another example of that. You needed every bit of Janai Broome's 30 minutes to get us there, but Auburn got there.
Yeah, absolutely. The offense, minus Dalton Connect, just not the same. Chaz Lanier, a really good shooter. I don't think he's the overall scorer that Dalton Connect is as far as his ability to get to the rim and, make the back to the basket, post up type stuff. Dalton Connect was more of a diverse scorer. Chaz Lanier is a really good shooter, and you saw that in moments last night when he don't need but a little breath of fresh air,
Quick
and
release too, man.
he will
Scary.
knock it down. So, he's a guy that could heat up in a hurry, and Auburn did a really good job, which is why the whole situation with a lot of people have asked about what's going on with Ja'Kai Howard and blah blah. Like, I mean, I don't know a lot of details. I do know from the people who were there at the game that situation started with the Chaz Lanier 3 because Howard overhelped off of Lanier. And they're basically like, yo, that's the one thing we told you guys not to do. It's like, we can live with everybody else. Don't let this guy get open looks. And so, he got fussed at about it. And apparently he didn't have a great reaction to it. But Coach Pearl said they talked in the locker room and they talked after the game and he'll be fine. So I am looking forward to see, and hopefully Ja'Kai Howard, figures it out and understands, in those limited minutes how to be effective. But definitely talent's not going to be the issue with that young man. And hopefully he'll have an opportunity to work through whatever challenges he's having going through the remainder of this year. And we'll see what happens in the offseason.
And again, in a game like that, Ike, every mistake you make in that game is costly just because of the fact that buckets are hard to come by. So if you're giving up a bucket, if you're not playing according to your assignments, if you're doing what you've not been coached to do, it's a big deal in this game. Right. It's so much so to where I felt like there was moments where some of guys like Dylan Cartwell, who we saw really didn't try to do much in the post, even though he had opportunities. Like, even guys like him realized the gravity of this moment. Like, hey, I'm gonna give the ball to someone who can actually, I feel more confident to make a bucket, because every possession is critical against this opponent. So if you're leaving guys open that you shouldn't be leaving open, you're probably gonna get fussed at by this coaching staff. But again, I think that's something that Ja'Kai has to understand. This is a coaching staff that, while people enjoy playing for them, they understand that they're going to get coached by this coaching staff. They're going to get into them. Bruce Pearl is tough on these guys, but those guys love him for it. They know he loves them. The coaching staff loves him, and I think that he'll be all right.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. They'll figure out a way to work through it, or they'll figure out a way to separate amicably. That's kind of how it goes, and hopefully it will be the working through that will happen with that one. But yeah, a good game last night, a good win versus a tough team. There's a couple of comments in here I want to get at that are regarding this before we move on to the next topic. Ephesians 2:8-9 says, great W last night. Offense has seemed a little weird in the last two games. Seems like the spacing has been bad, which makes the ball get stuck, causing a bad shot. I think they can clean it up, though. Listen, you went how many games is it now? What's the record right now for Auburn on the season?
18-1.
18-1. So you went 15 games plus the offseason with Janai Broome as the focal point of your offense, and he hasn't been there, or he just got back really in this game. They have to relearn how to be able to be a team without him. So the offense is going to look different. It's not going to be as efficient. It's not, because you've been playing a certain way for a very long time, and you're having to figure out how to do these things for longer stretches of time without Janai in there. It's going to impact how clean that operation looks. And I don't think people are giving enough credit to how good the defenses are that Auburn is going against. Again, Tennessee, as far as defensive efficiency, is one of the best in the country. So they're going to make you look bad on offense. Yeah. Right? You played against a Mississippi State team, even though you did well against them, that is high in defensive efficiency. They're going to make you look bad at points when you're going and doing those sorts of things, right? So it's a mix of both. You hit a period of time in your schedule where you're going up against some really good defenses. Georgia, a really physical, tough defense that's going to push you out of your spots and make you try to catch away from where you want to. And you don't have the centerpiece that you're used to functioning around, it's going to look weird, right? Now, that doesn't excuse some of the stuff that we've seen some players as far as their individual stuff. But yeah, as far as the fluidity of the offense, that should be expected against tough defenses when you're relearning how to play offensively without your centerpiece.
And I think this is also the time of the year where teams are starting to see some things on film that they're trying to take away. And I think what used to come natural for this team, especially when you're playing out of conference opponents, you're starting to see. I mean, we saw this 2 years ago when we had Walker Kessler and Jabari. Like teams started taking certain things away, and we started seeing Auburn, who looked invincible going into conference play, they started to look a little vulnerable at times. And so I think this is the time of the year. It's happening to other teams. Let's keep that in mind, because other teams are dropping games. Auburn is still undefeated in his conference. Alabama has 1 loss. Other teams behind, I think Florida has 2. Tennessee has 3 now. Like Kentucky got handed its 3rd loss. Like the teams are starting to get exploited in ways. It's just Auburn's turn. And Bruce Pearl has also said that, hey, he expects us to lose some games in conference play. Now, I'm hoping he's wrong, right? We all hoping that he's wrong, but he knows that if you're a good coach, you know how to take apart your own team, right? A good coach understands the weaknesses of his own team, and he understands and respects the coaching staffs across this conference. He knows that there are good coaches and coaching staffs that can really exploit some of the weaknesses that he sees within his own team. He's hoping they don't do it. He's hoping that we're able to get the best of those teams. But you saw a great example of that last night, where you had a team that had the dogs and the horses to actually limit Auburn. They were able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that goes with what Brad Browning is saying here. Tennessee's defense is elite. They have elite on-ball defenders, and they play really good team defense as well. So, there aren't a lot of teams who have looked good against this Tennessee defense this season, right? So Auburn was not immune to that. So hopefully Auburn can continue to, improve and get some stuff. LSU's the next game, but I mean, nobody's scoring a bunch of points on Tennessee this year. That's not that. Again, that what happened last night was not abnormal for Tennessee. They're giving up less than 60 points per game on average this season.
And again, you're the number 1 team in the country. And I said this before. You're going to get everyone's best shot. Everyone wants to be that team that knocks off the number 1 team in the land. For sure. We've seen it when teams came into Neville Arena in the past. Auburn played with a little bit more energy in those games. You're going to see that. So.
Yeah. Last one here before we transition. Derek McClellan says, what do you guys have to say about the Tennessee fans playing down that dub yesterday, saying we shouldn't celebrate a 2-point victory at home? I disagree. Celebrate every win during SEC play. Thoughts on people saying, I didn't see this because, of course, I stay away from social media as much as possible. So I didn't see a lot of this reaction, but Tennessee fans apparently saying Auburn was celebrating too much for a 2-point win. Thoughts?
If it's a 2-point win over, I don't know, Monmouth, perhaps, but a 2-point win over top 10 opponent Tennessee, absolutely, we should celebrate.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't storm the court and dance in the middle of the thing, but they were happy to get a toughly contested win at home versus a top 10 team with game day there and all of the stakes of trying to retain number 1, staying unbeaten in conference.
Another quad 1 victory. Yeah, I'm gonna celebrate that. That's a big deal.
I don't have any issue with the players being excited. What it shows to me is it still matters to them, right? Like it can be one of those things where you just walk off the court like, oh, act like you've been there. No, to them, it's still like, man, we haven't proven anything. And every big game, every big moment is another opportunity for us to prove that we belong here. And they're staying in that moment as much as they can. And that keeps you hungry when you feel like, man, we did something tonight. Guys, we accomplished a thing. This was a good win for us. We're going to celebrate it. I'm not mad at that at all.
You faced, at the time of your matchup, Auburn has faced 3 straight top 25 opponents, and they're 3-0 in those matchups. Yeah, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. I'm not going to downplay that. I'm not going to feel bad for being excited about that. No, every Auburn fan should be excited about the fact that they're pro. Because again, Auburn teams in the past would have lost that game. So to be able to win that type of game, that type of matchup, no, I'm proud of what those kids accomplished, and they should be proud as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Other things that happened yesterday. Auburn, of course, had a lot of young talent in town, a lot of them attending the game. The 2025 class was announced at the game, where they came out there and got an opportunity to be in front of the fans for the first time. Junior Day happened, where the junior class that's rising for the 2026 cycle was in town, some of them again at the game. Um, Now, neither myself nor Caesar were present at any of this, but what are your thoughts on things that you may have seen from what happened yesterday as far as the energy around the football program?
I think that I'm impressed with what this coaching staff is doing in terms of making Junior Day a big deal.
Mm,
From the moment Hugh Freeze got on campus as Auburn's head coach, Junior Day has become a thing, right? We would hear about Junior Day and it'll just be something that, something that happened at Auburn, but no big coverage about it because prior coaching staffs didn't really make a big event of it. This coaching staff is capitalizing off of every opportunity, and the names that they brought in for Junior Day, impressive. But it's been impressive every year, Ike. I'm gonna ask you this though: was that a first last night where the 2025 class and transfers from the portal was announced like that? We've seen them attending basketball games, but for them to be announced, is that a first, or is that
I
is
don't
that
I don't
is that
know. I can't remember. I can't remember whether or not that happened last year. They definitely have been in attendance at games, but I don't know if they've been like, "Hey, walk them out there on the court,"
yeah,
type. I don't. Yeah, I don't know. It may have happened. Like, and forgive my memory if that's not if that's a thing that's happened before. But yeah, it does. It does feel the energy feels very different around how they want to celebrate each other, right? Like, I'm anticipating that happening in the reverse, maybe during a football game where they're like, all right, this is blah blah blah, bring them out there on the field type of thing. But the camaraderie around ha- what I do understand is Coach Freeze knows how to capitalize on the energy of Neville Arena. He absolutely knows, hey, this is going to be an electric environment. Let me make sure they understand the type of fan base Auburn has. And
yeah,
I'm going to put them in this space and they can say, oh my goodness, like, because those football players who they've been to football games and they're, and you can come and you can see them going crazy. But then when you see it happening in basketball as well, you're like, yo, this is just how it is here. You know,
right.
and if they wanted to and they wanted to hop in town early, they could have went to a gymnastics meet and seen a crazy environment in there as well. It's just the way the Auburn fan base, when they're excited about a program, they are going to show up and they're going to be ravenous and they're going to make it loud and they're going to do all of the fanfare, all the stuff. And I think that is a thing. If you're a player, you want to be able to be in a space where you feel like you're going to be celebrated as a player.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, you're showing, hey, this is truly a sports town.
Yeah.
You're right. It's not just football, but in the same sense is that when you're putting that class on display, and let's be clear, there are certain people in your recruiting. You can have a recruiting class that's still recruiting for your program because
Right.
other kids want to catch passes from a Deuce Knight, right? They
Right.
want to throw passes to a Cam Coleman, right? So you can bring in a class and that class can still do work even after they've signed the dotted line for you. So for those players to come into town and hang out with those players early in the day, see how they mix. I think there were some players who talked about this, Ike, that for them to meet with those guys, see how they fit in, experience the facilities, and then experience the fan base that
Hmm.
evening and see how they show love to the prior class before you is an effective recruiting tactic by Hugh Freeze, and I like how they're thinking about how all of this is interconnected. Good job in terms of how they handled Junior Day. I'm excited to see how the fallout from that in terms of
Yeah.
how Auburn has positioned itself with recruits.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of activity in terms of solid commitments as of yet that have come out of that experience. But you do hear some good things coming from some of the reports for how recruits enjoyed themselves this weekend, and there were some that brought their families along. So the atmosphere was ripe to get the people who are connected to these young men in and seeing kind of the way that the fan base treats the athletes and the atmospheres that their kids may be stepping into here in the next two years. So looking forward to seeing kind of what the fruits of that were. Like the list was extensive. We talked about it a little bit on Wednesday, and a lot of those young men showed up. But I think all 6 of the guys that were committed were in town and present for Junior Day. And just from what they were saying on their social media, they seem to still be locked in with Auburn in terms of, solidifying their commitment. One of the things I thought was interesting, there was a conversation that went with one of the, I think it was Zion Ely, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to say incorrectly which recruit it was, just in terms of talking to Coach Freeze and him making it clear, hey, I'm still going to go take visits. And Coach Freeze was like, good, I want you to go do that. Like, go take other visits because I want to know that your commitment to Auburn is solid. Like, so, and you won't know that unless you get an opportunity to go and look and see what these other folks are. And we'll still be here. Like, we're still going to continue to open conversations with you. We're going to do all the things that we've been doing. But I don't have a problem with you going and seeing what other folks have to offer, because ultimately what we want to have happen is you choose the place that you feel is best for you. And I think taking that mindset towards recruiting with how well this coaching staff recruits, and they know that they can go get talent, means that you're going to have more guys that are actually committed to your program and not for other reasons. And it helps to curb some of the transfer portal attrition that you may see.
Yeah. Also, too, man, it's early, but Auburn is already rated like a top 10 recruiting class across recruiting sites. So to see this type of momentum by this coaching staff, like they still working, man. And it's impressive that Hugh Freeze is yet to have a winning season. Yet you are still in it for these top 10 recruits. Auburn is due for a breakout season on field, which is really, in my opinion, going to help them capitalize off of the momentum that they've already started for this 2026 class.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think this year, we talked about this a little bit with Dukes to Scoop on Wednesday night. You gotta put some dubs out here. Like, we can't have any more 6-win. I honestly, we haven't gotten too far into this. I don't even really want 7 wins next year. I think 8 wins really needs to be the bar that Auburn is shooting for. Yeah, like you've got to at least get to 8 wins next year, I think, to get yourself in a good, because I think if you win 8 games, it's not going to be by happenstance. Like, I don't think you miraculously win 8 games. I think, you get a little lucky if you win 10, right? But if you win 8, it's because you went out there and you won, 6, 7 wins, and then you got the ball to bounce your way for an additional one. But I think 8 wins is really where you need to be, considering kind of just how unlucky, I guess is the right word, it feels like last year's team was. It seems like when there was a tipped pass that was supposed to go in the direction of someone in an Auburn jersey, it did not happen for the most part last year, right? Like, okay, so Cam Coleman doesn't catch a slant across the middle field. Does it have to go directly to a defender after it deflects off of his hands? Or you're playing against Georgia into the half and a tipped pass happens right there in the end zone, and it lands directly in the hands of a Georgia player. Like, why does it have to be the exact worst thing at that moment for so many games last year? And so, a little of that is you're hoping that some of those things tilt in your favor, and others of it is just hoping you play a little bit better so that some of those small things that may happen don't matter as much towards the outcome of the game. But this has to be the year from a talent standpoint that you start to see that tilt in the opposite direction.
Well, we got to talk about talent in a minute and just give our thoughts on how this team projects moving forward. So I'm interested to get into that conversation.
For sure. A couple more here. Lawrence Robinson says, facts. We've always said, if you love Auburn, Auburn will love you back. Freeze is just showing that to recruits.
Yeah.
Listen, man, shout out to just the the energy that Coach Freeze puts behind recruiting, it's such a stark contrast to what was in the previous coaching staff, and not just with Coach Freeze, but I mean, just across that staff. Like, as much as I like the tactical and X and O mind of a guy like Ike Hilliard, he doesn't have the same kind of energy towards recruiting that Marcus Davis does. He just doesn't. Like, and I don't know if that is just because Coach Freeze pushes that so heavily with his staff, but you don't see that same kind of tenacity or that same kind of drive towards like being out there on the road, because I don't think that was the culture of the staff previously. It just wasn't a priority from the top, and it definitely did not trickle down to other guys taking their own passion and initiative towards that. But you see it with Coach Vontrell King Williams. Like, he's got an energy about the way that he recruits that's just different. And you know, and I can go on and list guys, you know. Shout out to Will Howard, who's putting, did I say his name? Will Howard was daggone quarterback from Ohio State. What's the dude's name? What's the dude's name that runs the recruiting thing that came over from LSU?
Oh, dang it. Yeah,
brain fart. Anyway, sitting here thinking about dang on quarterbacks, but anyway, but still, the kind of energy that they're putting
probably help us before I
they
find
probably
the
will.
answer.
But
Will
Redmond, thank you. The kind of energy that they're putting behind those types of efforts, even hopefully, you know, Will Redmond has put that together with the transfer portal, because that was, again, an obvious and noted blind sight from Coach Hugh Freeze of like his ability to really recruit the transfer portal. We will see whether or not you see more instances of guys like last year's, because I feel like they did fairly well in the transfer portal last year, right? Like, you went and got one of the best wide receivers that you could potentially have got. I mean, I don't know if there's a transfer wide receiver that was more impactful last year. And so we'll see whether or not, now that Redmond's in the fold, whether or not he has the same kind of eye for quarterback talent, right? Like, if your transfer portal quarterback works out better, like, how much of that pre-vetting was happened with Will Redmond, and Coach Freeze was like, okay, if this is the guy you say we need to go get, let's go pull the trigger and make it happen, right? And so we'll see what happens in terms of that sort of thing. But I'm hoping that all of those things blend together to have a really good outcome. But we'll talk about some of those outcomes here in just a minute. Before we do, one more here from Connor Hall, who says 2025 football watch parties would be very interesting. I've considered this, whether or not I will, instead of going to the games, do watch parties with you all.
That's the thing. Ike is normally there with Mike for those.
Yeah.
So y'all usually pulling double duty, because I know that's on you, big dog. Like, if you wanna stay back and do that,
yeah, I don't know.
I'll be around.
I mean, you could always do watch parties if you wanted to be able to get in there and talk to the people. So I don't know. We'll think about that. It is something I've already considered going into this coming up season, whether or not that's more of something that works well for our audience. Because I mean, I like going to games, but I don't have to be there. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
I'll leave that up to. I'll put the in the chat from the Green Name Gang, and we'll see what you guys want to do with that. All right, let's take a quick break here. We'll get back on the other side, and we will get into On 3, talking a little bit about teams that they feel like can be in the top 25 for this next season. You guys are watching the Weekend Tailgate. This edition of the War Report is brought to you by our generous sponsors. The Opelika Rage Room in Opelika, Alabama. The Rage Room is a place where anger and stress find their ultimate release. Call or text 334-777-6688 to set up a session today, or check them out online at opelikaRageRoom.com. Golden's Cast Iron. Whether you work out, grill out, or chill out, you deserve the best life possible, and Golden's Cast Iron is here to provide the tools to help you do it. Check them out at goldenscastiron.com. As always, thank you to the sponsors of the War Report. Thank you to those of you who continue to support with your dollars by becoming members of the War Report community. We appreciate you all very much. You can get to $5.99 patron level, get you all the perks, and $3.99 get you that supporter level, and we will continue to give you all that great content Lots of film review yet to come. I got a couple more games from Auburn, so we can go back and review that stuff. And I took your suggestions from the post that I put in the community for the members of things you wanted to see in film review. So I am compiling that stuff so we can get into that during the off season. So make sure you get your memberships active. Maybe someone will gift a membership to you. You get a free month of membership to experience what it's like on the other side of that paywall. And we appreciate everybody who continues to support us by gifting memberships to someone. They get a free month of membership. And Valentine's Day is on the horizon. Make sure you are groomed and ready to go. Manscaped.com is the place that you can go to do that. Use code REPORT, gets you 20% off plus free shipping when you go to Manscaped. I am sure the lady in your life, or fella in your life, if that's what you're gifting for, I don't know, ladies, if you want to give something to your fella, you can make sure he has the tools necessary. Make sure you go to manscaped.com. Use code REPORT when you do to get you a little something off at America's #1 source for that sort of thing. I don't know if it's America's #1. I just made that up. I might have just completely lied to y'all. And Manscaped is not #1 for any of that stuff. But
in our hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
It's not a reality. It's in our hearts.
I need to come up with like some sort of music for this thing because I want to like just make this a special thing. But I said I was going to start doing this, and we are getting into it. Auburn sports news here on a Sunday. We will start it off with Auburn women's basketball, who has been struggling mostly because of a lot of injuries happening, but they are playing today versus Florida inside of Neville Arena at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. So that tips off here in about 30 minutes. So hopefully the ladies can get their second conference win today versus Florida. So we'll see how that goes. Yu-Ting, who made her debut a couple of games ago, missed the last game against Mississippi State, and they got the doors blown off them by Mississippi State. It was not a pretty game at all, but hopefully she'll be back and ready to play for this one. So Lady Tigers are about to hit the court here, or already out there doing warm-ups. So Mike G is there covering that game for those wondering where he is today. Baseball. Single game, mini plan, and flex plan tickets are on sale right now. So if you want to get in on the action for Auburn baseball this year, they've done the renovations over there to the field. If you want to go check that out, make sure you guys get in and purchase your tickets to be a part of the action for Auburn baseball. They need a resurgent year this year because last year didn't look so great out there on the diamond, but hopefully they've gotten really was a pitching issue last year for the most part. The offense is going to be up and down for most teams, but if you have good pitching, you can weather that. But pitching just was not great for Auburn last year, and hopefully they'll be in a better place from a pitching standpoint this season. So make sure you get your tickets. Go ahead and get those purchased. Auburn gymnastics got the dub versus number 14 Oregon State. Auburn's currently ranked 12th in the nation right now. The interesting thing about this one is that Oregon State initially was celebrating, thought that they had won, and then upon further review, there was a deduction from one of their routines, and Auburn ended up getting the victory in that meet. So yeah, sad day for the Oregon State fans who were in celebration mode for a little while and then eventually had to, turn that into tears. So I don't feel bad for them, but that's what happened. Then the seniors' last opportunity to face arch rival Bama in swim and dive got the dual win over them. So congrats to swim and dive for going out there and handling business against that team from the other side of the state, getting that victory in that meet. And a lot of great things happening right now for Auburn sports all around. And thank you to everybody who continues to support Auburn sports. So if you are into any of this stuff, make sure you check them out. It's tennis season right now too. So if you're into tennis, man, they got, tennis meets going on. I've never heard anybody say that they go, can you even go watch tennis meets? Do they have that? I don't even know. I ain't gonna hold you.
Know the answer to that.
I don't know nothing about no tennis meet at all. So yeah, I don't even know what to say in regard to that. But anyway, let's move on. We're going to get over into the next portion of this conversation and talk about what we have here. On 3 had their top 25, way too early top 25, understood that this conversation is happening at a time where you probably should not be having this conversation. But since they started the conversation, I don't think it's wrong for us to join the conversation. That's fair, right? If they start the conversation.
Yeah.
So Auburn makes an appearance all the way up at number 11 in on threes way too early. College football top 25. Caesar, are they crazy? 5-7 Auburn, top 25 to start the season?
No, they're not. They're not crazy because I do think Auburn has a top 25 roster. I don't know if it's 11, but I do believe that it's a top 25 roster when you consider that Hugh Freeze has built already 2 top 10 classes and I think top 10 in terms of portal classes as well, if I'm not mistaken, in a row. So he's been doing work in terms of upgrading the talent, and he has definitely done that. He's well on his way to doing that for a 3rd straight year in a row. So I don't think it's crazy to believe that where Auburn was when Hugh Freeze got here, that the talent was beginning to slip out of that top 15. When you talk about blue chip ratio, right? We had slipped out of that top 15 because again, we were not really recruiting at a elite level or at a level that Auburn fans have grown accustomed to. But with Hugh Freeze being here 2 years, this isn't, even though it's way too early, I don't think it's crazy that Auburn's in the top 25. You can argue where they fit in the top 25, but top 25 definitely amongst, especially when you consider who else is listed here in this graphic. No, I think Auburn should definitely be in the top 25. Pretty interesting that they're ahead of Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at kind of the landscape around Auburn at number 11 there. They are the 3rd ranked team. Well, excuse me, 4th ranked. Sometimes I forget that Texas is in the SEC right now, but 4th ranked team in the SEC according to this, right? So you got Texas, Georgia, South Carolina, 5th ranked. Because Florida is up there at number 9 in front of Auburn. So there are 4 teams ranked ahead of them in On3's rankings. Florida is an interesting one, right? So I think South Carolina had some young talent along their defensive line that's going to be coming back. Their, quarterback, redshirt freshman, right? So he's going to be there. But that feels like a really bold take to say that they're going to be there in the top 8.
Illinois being top 10 is they had a good season last year, but are they? I don't know. And again, what's the metric here? This is another thing too. Like, what are we basing this off of? Are we basing this off of strictly talent? Are we factoring coaching into this? Because again, this is why I would probably not put Auburn that high at 11, is because I think there's a question mark in terms of coaching on the offensive side of the ball. I think DJ Durkin has done a tremendous job in year 1 with the talent that he's assembled, or the talent that he's working with, rather, because he's only been there a year. But he did a great job last year. And there's just times where that defense kept Auburn in games where in years past they would have been blown out and ran off the field. Can the offense match that level of productivity? To me, that's the big question, because there were some games over the past 2 seasons with Hugh Freeze being here. Auburn should have won some of those games.
Right. But
either poor decisions here and there. Obviously, players got to make plays. But there were some games where I'm like, how did you get outcoached and outplayed by New Mexico State? Like, how did you lose that Iron Bowl game? Like, you were right there at home. You know what I mean? Like, there were some games that Auburn could have eked out wins to where you don't have a losing record in one of the first 2 seasons of Hugh Freeze's tenure. So have they cleaned that part up? Ike, to me, is a question, because if they have, I'm not mad at 11. I'm not mad at that 11 ranking, because you got the talent.
Right.
Can you put it together with the talent that you have? Because if there's issues and gaps in coaching and in in-game coaching decisions, I don't know if talent can overcome that when you're playing a team that is equally as talented as you are. Don't know.
Yeah, and I think, the strategic portion for this staff has been, create a team that's so talented that it's hard to coach them out of a game, right? Like, we're just going to call what we call, we're going to play how we play, and our talent is going to be equal to the task to go and get it done. And I think for the last few years, you've been trying so hard to coach around your talent, right? And figure out like, okay, well, what can we do with these guys, as
Right.
opposed to being like, this is what, and this will be a thing where that's both a good and bad thing, right? Like, because I think that elite coaches find that recipe a little bit better than what Coach Freeze and his staff have done over the last 2 seasons. Like, I don't think that they've done a good job of saying, we can coach around this. We can scheme our way into X, Y, and Z and figure out ways to manufacture this and get that. I don't think they've done a good enough. Like, I don't think 5 wins, 6 wins is evident in we've schemed our way to some things that we can do with the talent that we have. It seemed almost as if, well, this is what we do. We're going to try to do this, and we'll just figure out, can we do it with you all? And then you realize you can't. And then you're like, oh crap, we're screwed. Okay, well, season's over with here. Like, we're just gonna have to grin and bear it and apologize. Hey, we tried really hard, type stuff. And I don't know that is going to be good enough in year 3. So you better hope that you've gotten a compilation of talent that can actually go out there and execute the things that you're asking them to do, because you have not shown the ability to pivot yet. And that, I think, is what separates the best coaches from coaches that are good. I think right now there's this thought process that maybe Coach Freeze isn't a good coach, and I just don't think that that's true. But he's not. He is not proven to be elite by any stretch of the imagination right now.
Right. And then again, I think in a conference that has been the crown jewel of college football, if Auburn's going to make noise in this conference, you need great coaching, because there's great coaches already here.
Right.
So,
yeah, and so you mentioned this, and this is a direction I wanted to go with. This is, does some of this renewed confidence in Auburn have to do with potentially what people feel like is a higher floor, if you want to put it in that way, in the quarterback talent, right? Because you have the 5-star plus kids that are in that room right now. And so you're like, okay, no, Auburn actually has legitimately talented quarterbacks in that room right now. They should be able to go out there and compete. And what has been holding the team back has been offensive productivity. So now you've got, at least from a talent perspective, you have quarterbacks that you feel a little bit more confident in their ability. Do you think there's any thought? I mean, because listen, Texas is losing their starting quarterback, but everybody feels like they're just gonna, listen, it's Arch Manning stepping in at Texas right now, and you've got Steve Sarkisian, one of the greatest offensive minds in college football right now. Texas is gonna be fine. They're gonna be back. They're loaded with talent. Ohio State, I don't know who the quarterback there is going to be. Will Howard, is he back next season for Ohio State? I have no idea if he declared. I hadn't been looking into that. Oregon's going to have a new quarterback starting. That Penn State's going to have a new quarterback starting. Notre Dame's going to have a new quarterback starting. Georgia, though, you've seen Gunnar Stockton is going to have a new starting quarterback next year, right? Like, all of these teams, you have to get to number 8 before you have a guy that's not going to be the incumbent starter on his team next year. And so does some of the uncertainty around some of the quarterback situations, and maybe a little optimism around who Jackson Arnold can be and the safety net that is Deuce Knight, present Auburn as a team that could be on the rise?
Well, they're definitely, the ceiling has improved, right? That's one thing. Like, that's one thing that we can argue. Peyton Thorne, he was what he was, right? You're hoping that not only has the floor improved, but the ceiling has improved. Right. Jackson Arnold is very early. He's still very early into his college career. Deuce Knight arriving as a 5-star prodigy, right? Like, yes, the ceiling is raised, so the potential for this Auburn offense increases even more given the talent level. The floor has always been the conversation at Auburn when it comes to the QB room. And where is Auburn's floor? And I think coaching, plays a big part in that. Understanding what these guys can and cannot do, scheming around that, using that to attack other teams' weaknesses. Like, to me, that's where the coach in Hugh Freeze has to really shine through. Right. Because again, you can mismanage good talent a lot. Like, for sure, this is, it's not like that solves everything, even though that's a big part of the puzzle. They got to figure out what to do with these guys and really ensuring, because as you stated, this is a very difficult offense to learn. And it's not like Jackson Arnold just made all the right decisions at Oklahoma, right? Yes, talent was deficient in some areas, but can you get him to where he truly is an extension of Hugh Freeze on the field? That's a Hugh Freeze question. That's not a
Right.
Jackson Arnold question. That's a Hugh Freeze question, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the rhetoric around the quarterback coach synergy last year was that was what Peyton Thorne grew to be, and it just that didn't prove to be true at all. That he's I feel like he's going to make the decisions I make out there. I pray to God that the decisions that he was making out there were not the ones that Coach Freeze would have made in some of those decisions, because they were not good in some of those scenarios. Excuse me.
Well, it wasn't because they couldn't get on the same page, and after I forget what game it was,
Georgia.
So clearly no. At times, right? He wasn't making the same decisions that Hugh Freeze would, because he said as much.
Right.
But you're hoping that you see less of that.
And so I wonder then, what was when you go back and you hear those kind of comments, and then you look in the season, like, how did they begin to drift apart so quickly? Like, how did it devolve away from he's seeing it how I'm seeing it out there, and he's making it? Is it truly a matter of he sees it how I see it on the blackboard, he sees it how I see it in practice, but he just can't put it together in the game? Is that really when we get out of the land of theory and we have to put it into actuality, is that really where the problem lied last year?
That's what it seemed like. It seemed, because again, Hugh Freeze would talk about how great he looked in practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he would sit and Hugh Freeze. One thing you got to give Hugh Freeze is that he would be a terrible poker player. Like, he doesn't mask anything, right? So he's standing in front of the media, you, Mike, confused as we are about what he saw. So obviously there's a disconnect there. And the question that we have towards a Hugh Freeze is, when there's clearly a disconnect between what you have coached this kid, what y'all have discussed in meetings throughout the week, what y'all have practiced, when he gets out there in the field and does something completely different after you have coached him to do one particular thing, at what point, Hugh, do you pivot from that and find the next guy who can do what you're coaching them to do?
Yeah. I mean, that to me is, again, the biggest looming question for really any coach, but like specifically for Hugh Freeze right now, is not just how well have you prepared the guy, but how well have you prepared the guy that's supposed to back up the guy? Because at some point in time, you need to be able to say, you're not getting it done. I need to pass this over to somebody else who I'm confident enough in that I'm going to let them go out there and take their lumps. And it's hard for me sitting here right now to think that that's going to be a true freshman, that he's going to be that confident in. But hopefully Deuce Knight, puts in that work during the spring and summer, and they grow in that confidence of, okay, maybe this kid really can go out here and make it happen. So, hey, Jackson, if you're not getting it done, like, what I don't want to hear is, well, we gave the job to him to have him because he seemed like he was pressing. Like, I don't want to hear that again, bro. Like, the pressing thing, we need to get that out of. If they're pressing in practice, they're not going to not press in games. I can't see how that is a thing.
Well, we didn't hear it last year, but what we did see, Ike, is when Auburn got into a tough situation where the offense had to do something, it was more of the same at times,
right?
Especially early in the season. I don't want to see that.
Right.
To where we just look like we can't get out of our way. We can't even rise to the occasion. I want this for Auburn to begin, even though we saw the offensive numbers improve, you just felt like if Auburn is in a situation where it has to move the football, we're done.
Right.
And if they can get, if they can give the impression that, hey, you know what? Even if we're down, even if we need a score, I still think Auburn is in this. Auburn can still make something happen. If we begin to create that sense of feeling around this offense, to me, that's growth and a movement in the right direction. I think that there is more talent. Shout out to Dukes the Scoop. He did a video last week where he was giving some intel and then some things what he was hearing about some of the player led workouts.
Right.
And he was impressed. Like there was some of the players are impressed with the new QBs. That's good. That's great. But there are a lot of teams with impressive QBs and defenses and whatnot. And when the pads start popping and players are, people have been watching film and are designing up schemes to stop you and slow you down, what happens then? Right? Everyone looks good in shells. Everyone looks good in player-led workouts. That's a start. It's important. But we need to know that when the lights come on, Jackson Arnold or Deuce Knight can make the plays. I think this is one of the things that bug you so much about Peyton Thorne at times is Peyton Thorne can do a lot of good things in the course of a game, right? He's not playing bad, but when you need him to make a play, no one's home.
Yeah.
That has to change with the players that Auburn has here. And I think this ranking here may signal that the optimism around some of the talent that Auburn has assembled, but it has to come together, Ike.
Yeah. So this is one of those things where, every year when Auburn is not in one of these rankings, Auburn fans are like, good. Auburn always does their best when nobody expects them to. Like, you don't even have that this year to go into, man, when I love when they underrate us, man, because we're going to show everybody. Like right now, people are actually expecting things from you. So can you play with expectation is the question now.
Well, Hugh Freeze is doing all the things that prior coaches didn't do. Like no one would have gotten Jackson Arnold in the past.
Yeah.
I don't think Gus would have gotten a Jackson Arnold, right? So he's doing the right things. This is why you guys said it when Dukes was on. The pressure is on Hugh now.
Right.
Gone are the days where, hey, give me some time, bring some talent in here. The talent is here. It's here, staring you in the face. What you gonna do, Hugh?
Right.
So it's put up or shut up at this point.
Yes, indeed. All right, let's get over here to the comment section before we get out of here. I want to hear you all's thoughts on all of the things that we've talked about so far. TK gives a big shout out to Kenyatta Watson doing massive work there. He absolutely is. That's a name I want to make sure that we talk about because Kenyatta Watson he's definitely kind of taken on that T. Reed mantle, if I could say that, right? Like of the popular online person that people see as a kind of tip of the spear when it comes to recruiting, and he's out there putting in work, and his connections to like the high school areas in which he recruits have shown paid dividends towards the recruiting. So definitely big shout out to Kenyatta Watson and what he's doing.
Yeah.
Connor Hall says, Ike, did I hear a while back that you have some all 22 film on someone? I absolutely do, Connor. We've already done 2 games of Jackson Arnold using all 22 films. So I did their bowl game the previous season when they played Arizona. And then last year we've done the Ole Miss game, and I do have the Tennessee film for Jackson Arnold. And then I've got some offensive linemen. So I've got a Mason Murphy offensive line tape. I've got the kid from Virginia Tech's name's escaping me right now, but I got his tape game from him. More stuff. Yeah. And I've already done one on Eric Singleton. So we got that out there. So, and then I've got some from Auburn players from last year as well. So it's plenty of tape, a lot of stuff during the off season. So make sure you are Green Name Gang, the watch the film stuff that's out there. You can go and check that out. Lawrence jumps in and says, if Jackson Arnold and Deuce thrives, does this mean that Auburn's issues were mostly on Peyton Thorne? Mostly, I think maybe is strong.
I will say that he will definitely get the blame.
Yeah,
but I don't know if he was actually the problem.
I mean, because here's the thing: most of your offensive line will be the same, right? Like you'll have really just you're anticipating only changing one starter along the offensive line and maybe another guy in Isaiah Miller, who was not as healthy last year. Hopefully he'll be healthy. So the offensive line will be mostly the same. Your running back room is mostly the same. I mean, you don't have Jarquez Hunter, who is a big portion of it. And your wide receiver room is mostly the same, right? Tight ends weren't super productive last year, mostly the same. So there aren't a lot of pieces that will be in place that will be significant upgrades other than tackle, which you hope to be a significant upgrade, that you can point to say, okay, well, they just really needed a left tackle, right? Like, I don't know. So yeah, I think that a lot of that is going to be on Peyton Thorne as far as like the blame is concerned. If that's really all that you change out and it starts working.
Well, here's the thing. We watch enough football. Like you watch enough film. We're very plugged into the program that there's certain things that we have to see, right? Like for example, when Auburn won the national championship with Cam Newton covered a multitude of sins, right? The next QB that came in behind Cam, could you blame a lot of the failures on that QB? No. It was just Cam was that amazing, and that Auburn's he compensated and covered up stuff that otherwise you would have had an 8-5 squad that year without a Cam Newton. And what I'm saying is that if Jackson Arnold, Deuce Knight come in and ball out, does he fix some? Does that mean that they covered up some of the systemic issues and problems that Auburn has had? The play calling issue. Have they addressed that? Who's calling plays at certain given points? The red zone offense, right? Like there's certain things that happened with this team last year that you cannot fully blame on Peyton Thorne. There were times where Peyton Thorne delivered a perfect ball to a receiver, dropped it in the end zone. Like there's certain things that had nothing to do with the quarterback. And yes, you can have a transcendent talent that can cover up some of that stuff. But I don't know if we can say that it was all on Peyton Thorne, because in addition to seeing Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight improve, I want to see some things improve in terms of play calling. I want to see some things improve in terms of preparation for this for games. Like there's some things we need to see offensively. There's a reason why our offense has struggled at times the way that it has.
For sure.
Has those things improved in addition to that?
Yeah, that's why I say I think maybe mostly is a little strong. I mean, partially for sure, right? But I don't know if he was the biggest issue, and you know, we will find that out really quickly, how much of it was Peyton Thorne and how much of it was just kind of dysfunction around him as well.
Right.
So yeah, we'll find those answers out really quickly. Lawrence jumps in and says, when Hugh said that Peyton is a thinker, I still feel like that was coach speak to say he was second guessing me. I think that's almost exactly what he meant when he said that. He's like, he pretty much was like, he overthought the situation and he should have just done the simple thing as opposed to the more complex thing. And he was just thinking too much. Like, I think that's pretty much exactly what he was saying when he said that.
Wow.
So, yeah. Anthony Rudd says, I think those rankings are based off of recruiting for real and what we have coming back. Yeah, I think that's mostly.
I agree. That's
that's what On3 is a recruiting site. They're mostly doing that on talent evaluation. I think the interesting thing about that, though, is you've got teams that are still recruiting at a high level and have had years upon years upon years of good talent that are behind Auburn in those rankings. And there are teams, like, to your point, like in Illinois, that I don't think that they did anything phenomenal in recruiting, but somehow are up there in the top 10, right? So you just wonder, it can't just be about that. Like, a portion of that absolutely has to do with the recruiting, but some of it has to do with something else that they're seeing.
I have not seen Illinois in any of the recruiting rankings over the past couple of years we've been looking, unless I just have not been paying attention, which is possible.
That's completely possible. Yeah, I don't know. We'll finalize this here with Marion Thomas, who says, Ike, what's going on with Auburn women's basketball? Is Talia redshirting? Will Coach Harris make it to next season? I've seen some people saying stuff about firing Coach Harris. I think that's that's weird to me, considering how bad a shape this Auburn women's basketball program was in before she got here and the trajectory that she brought it to. For them to have a bad season this year with as many injuries as they've had, I think it's premature to get into a conversation about her being fired based upon that. And if she does, then I would wonder, like, how do you even justify that? A coach having a bad season when some of her best players have been hurt for the vast majority of it is to be expected in a league as tough as the SEC.
Agreed.
And then in terms of Talia, is she redshirting? I mean, at this point in time, if she doesn't play a game coming up here soon, they might as well redshirt her, because unless Auburn goes on some hot streak, like, they're not going to make it to the postseason. So why burn a year of eligibility for her through this year when you don't have a real chance of getting to some postseason situations there? So I don't know that decision has been firmly made, but it's going to start to make sense really a lot here in just a moment. So
yeah, and to me, they talk about you need luck to make a run.
Right.
This is what they're talking about
For
in
sure.
terms of, because everything that could have gone wrong for this team has gone wrong, from injuries
Yeah.
and whatnot. And so I think you have to give some grace to a coach who, from the moment she stepped foot on this campus, has done nothing but turn water into wine with what she's been given, right? And so
with very little support from, like, recruiting resources, very little NIL support, she's figured out a way to bring in a Deanna Gaston. She got Talia Scott to commit over here, and then she gets injured. Like, you can't just throw that away as if that's meaningless, especially when you're giving so much latitude to a football coach for how well they're recruiting, and you've given them all the resources in the world. So you give one coach a bunch of resources and years to, like, look pedestrian, and then another one you don't resource much at all, and they still recruit well and had a bunch of injuries, and you're like, oh, but you're not performing well enough on the court. That's not fair. So
right.
yeah, if you're going to give Coach Freeze 3 to 4 years of time to figure it out, you should give Coach J that same sort of latitude, in my opinion.
Especially since she got them to a tournament last year.
Right.
Like, she got them to the tournament. Like, so you can see there's an upward trajectory. We know exactly why they're not doing well this year. It's not because she somehow forgot how to coach, or these girls forgot how to play. They just have not been the team. That's not the same team that they started the season with.
Right. All right. Well, we are going to get out of here. Appreciate you guys jumping in here with us. Once again, you are watching the Weekend Tailgate, brought to you by the good folks at Golden's Cast Iron. Make sure that you go and check them out. Code Get Your Weight Up, get you 15% off of the weights. TWR gets you $65 off of fire pits and Kamado grills. If you're not Green Name Gang, make that happen. A lot of great things happening. A lot more basketball games coming up that we will be doing watch parties for. So make sure you're tapped in with that. If you are Green Name Gang and you want someone else to get in on the fun, you can gift a membership and they'll get a free month's membership on you. Make sure you check out the other guys in the network that are doing great work out here. The Auburn Express is where we are, Up Tempo Podcast, College Loop, Just a Sec Pod, and don't forget Sooner Spotlight. In case you happen to be an Oklahoma fan, you can check them out over there and tap in with us on the merch store, man. You can go to the website, check it out, warreport.com. We've got merch over there. A couple of articles popping up over there as well if you want to check that kind of stuff out. But go ahead and check out the website and get yourself some War Report merch while you are over there. Before you get out of here, I would certainly appreciate it if you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and go ahead and share this content with somebody else out there. We will be back at you with more great War Report content later on this week. I'm pretty sure the conversation between Mike G and Kyle this week is going to have more in-depth stuff going on with Junior Day.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that they will get more into some basketball. I will definitely be getting into a lot of basketball this week with some Lobtown content. So make sure y'all are tapped in. But we're out of here until the next time. And as always, War Eagle.